Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Lore You Know. We are talking about the Scarred Lands still, and we are moving on to the Gleaming Valley. Why? Because right now on Kickstarter, you can go and support Onyx Path's current book that's coming out, a mega campaign called Dead Man's Rust, which not only focuses on the Gleaming Valley and the Hornsaw and that area around there, but builds on lore that has been severely lacking, I would say,
Mhm.
since third edition. There was like, hey, here's an entry, that's it, that's really it.
Yep.
And then fifth edition came along, introduced the Hollow Legionnaires as a new playable race, and really didn't build on that lore very much, did
Mhm.
it? Yeah,
Yeah.
But well, better than what we had in
Mhm.
3.5. But
true.
yeah,
But
but that's
now
not saying
with
much.
this new book,
Look,
Mhm.
which I
like,
will
wow.
post that there link to, and it is currently, we were just looking at, it's $589 away from its next stretch goal, which will be a gazetteer for Deirdrendal, which is the if you go back several episodes, we talked about that location and the god that is trapped there inside of a construct body, and how
Mhm.
this mega
Mhm.
campaign works into that. Because when you have something that, a disease that like actively kills constructs or things with constructs body, having a paranoid, very angry god facing that, I feel like there's extra repercussions going on there.
Yeah,
Yep.
because yeah, we can talk about that in a bit. But yeah,
Yeah,
Rust is cool.
yeah. So
Rust
go
is
support that.
yeah.
But meanwhile, the
But
Gleaming
meanwhile,
Valley. Hi, Fran and Sarah.
yeah.
How's it going?
Hello. Well, it's the apocalypse, but other than that, everything's fine.
Right?
Ah,
I just realized my audio was on my other computer, so if you were hearing echoes, that's my bad.
I wasn't, but hopefully our
I had
viewers were.
fixed it.
So the Gleaming Valley. So this episode, I got information out of 4 books. So I'm gonna point this out that um, we're kind of all over the place for the Hollow Legionnaires and the
Mm-hmm.
and the Hollow Knights. So there's the old 3.5 lore, which is basically just in the Galespad campaign setting. There's like little mentions here and there in some other books, but in terms of anything beefy, it's going to be in that book. And then there was the Cardlands Player Guide for 5e and Pathfinder, which introduces the Hollow Legionnaires playable race. Youngman's Guide Part 1. I want to mention this loudly because that's where they expanded the Hollow Legionnaire. There's a section in that called the Hollow Legionnaire Revisited, which I think does a lot to make this race more playable in 5e than what came out in the original SLPG. And then finally with Dead Man's Rust, obviously. We're going to talk about that. So I'm going to kind of go through this and talk about what came from what book. Like this was in this book and then this was added, and because this is all I'd say one of the most yes Andy things I've seen. They don't change a whole lot. There's some lore that gets changed, but not. It's more like clarified and expanded on than like, oh, we completely changed our minds and redid it. It's which I love. I love it when that kind of stuff happens in writing. It's one thing to change something because it made no sense or whatever, but I love it when they take it and they just build on it. My favorites. So start from the beginning. Who the heck are these hollow things, and why are they called hollow? And what's
Right?
all this business? And what happened? So, going back to the Divine War, we talked about how Bangle took a bunch of lions and turned them into his army, and Tardoon had all his dudes, and all these other people had their various people and armies that fought for them in a Divine War. Well, Corean made his own guys as well, and we know about the Mithril Golem. We talked about that a billion years ago. Well, he also made these things called the Hollow Knights. Um, very very Corean-y kind of dudes, in my
Oh
opinion.
yeah.
Where he got basically a bunch of really shiny plate mail armor. It's not mithril, but it's still like awesome. And he literally forged these souls, and it's not clear where he got the souls from, but apparently followers of his who had died, and built them into this legion of groups. And there was like,
If I recall correctly, he basically sort of reached out to dead followers and said, "I need help in this war. Um,
yeah,
I'll give you bodies, and if you'll fight for me."
I mean, the way I picture it, and this is going in headcanon, is he was in his heaven and went to various people who had gone to his heaven and went, "Hey, want to come back and fight in the Divine War? We, you're all warriors," and they're like, "Yeah, boss." And so they like, and there was how many? Like good, let's say 40, 50,000 of these guys, or at least that's who made it on the other side. It probably more at the beginning because not all of them necessarily survived the war. But so he built all these guys, and they're all identical, like suit of armor. Think your classic, like creepy movie where there's that suit of armor that comes to life, and like you're going down the dark hallway and whatever movie or video game, and then the suit of armor comes chasing after you, and you open the mask and there's nothing in there. That is a Hollow Knight. Like literally just plate mail. You open the visor, empty darkness. You hear this echoey, ghostly voice come out of it. It's a vibrating thing. It pulls out the long sword, has the big power shield. That is a Hollow Knight, and there's several tens of thousands of these guys, and they all look almost identical except for rank marks on like some part of the armor. It's like, I'm a general, and that's it. That's the only difference. So, as far as I know, they don't even have names. They're just like, these are rank and file. That is lieutenant. That is captain. And not even like Captain Bob versus Captain Fred versus Captain Jane. They're like just blank, and whatever personalities they had in previous life, it's just not even really there. They're just these basically constructs, really smart constructs. So they fought in the war, kicked ass, and Corean was like, and at the end of the war, I will reward you by bringing you back to life, and you can live another life on Skarn as a regular person. And they're like, yeah, great, cool. And blah blah blah, and like the war ended, and they're all like, okay, let's do the thing. And they went, and in the original lore, it's not clear how he was going to bring them back. Like it was like, well, I've got your bodies, I found them from the however many hundreds or thousands of years you lived in the past, and I'm going to go recover them or something. In the new lore, in Rust specific, or was it Rust? No, not Rust, but in the SLPG they clarified this, and actually in Rust they clarified this, that he had taken all of their bodies and put them in like this location on this mountain to be like, I'm going to put them here, and at the end of the war, we're going to go here, and y'all get your bodies back. It was sort of like that. And it was this mountain and this really nice valley in the middle of Gelspad that pretty much didn't get touched by the war. So they're like, yeah, they'll be safe there and all this stuff. This sort of sacred valley. But Vangel is a dick. We all knew this. This isn't news. But I guess Fangle was like, your Hollow Knights are better than my Manticora, so I'm going to be an asshole. And he goes and desecrates the bodies. And he's just like, nope, you don't get to come back. Fuck it. Just like, I don't know, pees on them or something. Whatever Vangle does. It desecrates the bodies. So they
And it's
can't
Vangle, so I can absolutely see that. He's just like, he whips it out, and
Yeah.
he's just like, oh, was this yours?
Vangle, if Vangle had a truck, it would have one of those little Calvin peeing stickers in the back window.
And like the big bull testicle things hanging down from the, yep. Yep.
That's something horrible, and it basically desecrates where Corean had placed all their bodies. And although my question was always like, why won't true resurrection work? You're a god, can't you just make them new bodies? But whatever
because
Vangle did,
because Vangle cast true desecration on
yes,
them,
basically. Vangle, like, no true resurrection, not even true resurrection, not even wish. They're just gone.
Or it just could be that like after Vangle pees on something, you just don't really want. No, you don't want that anymore. No.
So the Hollow Knights are like, but our bot, we were gonna be people again, and Corean's like, well, you're still constructs, and you're effectively immortal as constructs. So you can just stay here, and be like you are now.
I'll find a place for you.
So-
Those guys need help.
So he sends them to the valley where the bodies were kept, and they sort of move in like, I guess we're here now, and but purposeless. They're like, "Why we don't have a war to fight anymore?" And they're, pretty much single-focused constructs. We fight.
Yeah.
And now they have to be like, we don't fight. We
Yeah.
stand around.
We protect. Basically, Vangal is like, this valley is a really lovely place, but the people there are really
Corean.
put upon by Corean. Sorry. Basically, he says the folks there could really use protection, so the valley's kind of anarchic, and there are a bunch of people who are trying to become the Ironbred. Basically, who are like, we don't want to be Sutek anymore.
New lore. That is new lore.
This is new lore, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it was AV-17.
Actually, no, it's in the classic lore too. It's just not really elaborated on that they were Ironbred. But
oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's basically people, refugees in this valley, because this valley in this region of Gelspad, and this is right around in the middle of all the things we've talked about before. We've got the Hornsock Forest, we've got the Arkudan Desert, you've got the undead thing in the south, and there was a lot of devastation in the southern mountains of the Gascars. So this valley is unique in this region in that it is not dead, it is not crawling with undead, and it is not crawling with monsters. It's just this little valley that's nice and didn't get tainted by a dead titan, and is just one of the only places you can live in this whole region south of Derekeen that doesn't suck. Pretty much between Derekeen and Shelzar, this is about the only place that doesn't suck.
Yeah. And just real quick, on the map that's on the thing, you can see the Hornsaw Forest there. It's just really hard to read the map because the coloring is and everything is so crammed together. So you see there's the Hornsaw. My mouse around here. Here's the Gleaming Valley.
Yeah, but you've got the
City
Hornsaw on one
is up
side,
and
the Stricken
down.
Forest north of it, the Foul Forest to the north west. I mean, 3 forests with really, really nasty names, and they're all nasty forests for different reasons. We haven't talked about the Stricken and the Foul Forest yet, but and the southern Gascars were all like deforested for whatever reasons. So this little valley was it, and they sent the knights there to be like, you're gonna protect the refugees who've moved in here.
I can actually, it may be, well, it's still a little bit confusing, but I uploaded my newer Scarred Lands Gelspad map to the wiki, and I'll try pasting an image. I'll try pasting a link to that into the chat.
Yeah.
It's got the political boundaries on it and makes it a little clearer where stuff is, kind of. So let's see if that helps.
They move in, and there's these people there, and they're like, we're gonna try to set up civilization. That's what people do, right?
And everybody in the valley is like, yes, please, for shit's sake, we could really use the help.
Great, there's this wonderful military. They're going to come in and protect us from the raving monsters from all these places surrounding us and make sure none of them come in. And so they try to establish a government. AV-22 try to establish government. They completely fail. AV-27, they try to establish a government. They completely fail. They just don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
And this is all in the original lore, but it's not really explained.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we did for Rust is kind of pick it up and run with it, that these guys literally were at war for hundreds of years, and the humanity's kind of burned out of them. And so they're like, okay, so first we're going to have to assign all of you guys military ranks. This is the uniform code of military justice. And everybody in the valley is like, what? So they keep creating these giant bureaucratic messes that just don't stand.
Yeah, and so the people are like, no, we don't want this. And so they're like, okay, we'll try again, and they try again, and they try again. And then they give up for a while. And then, and this is old lore talking, 2 things happen. There's a bunch of druids from the
cannibals
forest area, the cannibal Ket.
From
They're
Ket.
just from Ket, and they cause this thing called the Druid War, and it's a big mess. And the Hollow Legionnaires like, we'll go help the good people in this war, and they
Hollow
go
Knights?
march off.
Mm-hmm.
Hollow
The
Knights.
Hollow Knights. Yeah.
Hollow Knights. That's I say Hollow Knights.
Yeah, it's
Hollow Legionnaires. Hollow Knights. And they help the Druids. The Druids go over to attack Amalthea, which is on the other side of the Ganges. And we haven't talked about the history of this area yet either. Another future episode probably. So they come and help fight that. They do what they can, but Amalthea falls, and they feel really bad about it. And they come back to the valley, and they're like, "Well, we fought off the Druids, but not before Amalthea fell, and all this stuff." But they looked at Amalthea as sort of an example of like, well, they had a civilization. Sort of, before it fell apart. And they wanted to honor them. And they wanted to be like, we feel bad about the fact that these horrible druids caused all these problems. And so they decided to use that as sort of an example of how to make a civilization. And they tried again, after not trying for like 50 years. And these farmers were just like, we're just gonna try our best. They tried again, and then AV 91, they established the Council of Tears, and using tenets from both Corean and Hadrada, because while they were originally all followers of Corean, they recognized that Hadrada was really good at making cities and civilization. And they were like, we could map some of the stuff other people have already done. Ooh, novel idea. And try to build something. And so they started just building these locations. Now, the previous locations were like, we made a fort. You can live in a fort, right? And the people were like, there's no market. There's no sewage system. There's no, I don't know, bedrooms.
We can't do this. We can't just kind of cram ourselves into a fort.
Right.
Yeah, they were like, no, this doesn't work. And we need rooms and things. We have a roof, but we need more than a roof.
We need a city, not a fort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
unfortunately,
we're not constructs. We need to eat and go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And
no.
Are...
The sad thing is, they still haven't gotten that message. They're just like, a city, right? You need a city. You can build a city. We remember what those
roof and walls.
Yeah.
That's a city, right? Roof and walls. And
so
they're like,
they built this spectacular city.
Let me get to that. I'm not there yet.
Sorry.
You're jumping ahead. So they first they took like some of these they made a whole bunch of forts in the failed attempts. And some of them they managed to convert. Some of them were just abandoned, like, you don't know that. And they kind of did this haphazardly. It wasn't even like for them necessarily. It was like, here's for the farmer people. And they're like, no, this doesn't work. So after all of that, those kind of places are laid fallow. Not really ruins, but they're just sort of like, we don't know what to do with it. Then they said, okay, we're going to try to build real civilization with actual systems in place. And they built the Golden City, which was like, where are we going to put it? We're going to put it on top of a mountain. Now you can go, Fran.
Okay, yeah. So basically, they decide they're going to build this epic city that will be, a song to the gods of law that they believe in and everything. And they build this incredibly beautiful, ridiculous location. It's this giant cruciform thing in the middle of a volcanic caldera full of water on top of a really, really high stratovolcano. And it's got these massive gates, like 200 feet across and 100 feet tall on each of the four sides. It's all beautiful and symmetrical. It's got a university, and it's got this huge government building, and it's got forges, and it's got giant piers, and it's got
big temples to Corean and Hadrada.
Yep. Built out of the most exquisite marbles and just gorgeous stonework and everything. And they're like, welcome to the city. And people show up and they're like, wow, this is gorgeous. This is where you can come to us, and we'll have the seat of government here, and the soldiers will be here, and you can come here and tell us your problems. And everybody walks in and they're like, so, um, where do we put our stuff? We have dorms. And the people get to the dorms and they've built these rooms for Hollow Legionnaire for Hollow
Oh,
Knights,
nice.
which is basically you have a room the size of a dorm room with a chair and a desk.
No bed,
And they're
no
like,
closet.
we need to sleep, and also some of us poop a lot, and where's the restaurants? And and uh uh and the Hollow Knights are kind of like uh crap. And so things almost go sideways, but by this point the Valley folks are kind of really convinced that like these guys are they're trying really
Trying
hard.
so hard.
So they go, all right, that one spoke over there that comes
It's
in
new
from the
lore.
edge of the caldera, can we just build over there? And the knights are like, yeah, okay. All right, we'll go build the stuff that we need, and you guys can keep your city. Okay. And by sort of the knights bowing and starting to learn to ask, all of a sudden it starts to work.
And this is to be fair, this is the old lore. I'm gonna point
Hmm.
this out. Pretty much ended at we built this city.
Hmm.
We built this city for us, for the Hollow
Yeah.
Knights. And when if you had gone to Gleaming Valley in the 3.5 indie days, there would not you would have been like, where do we poo? There wasn't it was built for these 30,000 Hollow Knight constructs, and that's really 99% of the population of the city were these constructs. And other than like some ambassadors and a few other little places, there really wasn't much else there. And they didn't really have the facilities for mortal people, um, for non-construct people. In um, with the invention of the Legionnaires, and we'll get to that in a bit, and with this influx of all these other people who wanted to be part of this community, they in the new lore, particularly in Rust, a lot of this was added to say we've created an area in this city that now non constructs can live and work and be and eat and poo and sleep and do things that people do. So this was added in the Rust thing and Fran was the major inventor of this bit of the city, which I think is pretty awesome. Um, so going back to the old lore, there's a whole bunch of kind of overlapping things about the valley. I want to talk about the valley before I go back to the city a bit. The valley, as I said before, had a bunch of these forts in various locations, many of which get converted over the years into like places like cities and villages and whatnot. And some of the villages were just villages that the farmers set up. And the valley pretty much got split into these regions because it's a pretty big valley, and there's or what they call vales. There's the north, or the no, sorry, the Summervale, which is this very warm section where it's like because of the winds coming from the Kurdan Desert and just the favorableness of how the mountains hit, it doesn't get super cold there. It doesn't get snows. It tends to get rain instead. It tends to be warmer. I grew up in a valley like this. It wasn't like Summer
Yeah.
Valley, but I grew up in a valley where, in New England, where the surrounding regions would get like 3 feet of snow and we'd get 3 inches.
Mhm.
And not because we were at a lower elevation, but just because of the way the mountains hit and just the way we were sheltered in that regard. It's like it was just a little bit nicer, and that was also where a lot of people lived because it was nicer. And they put up a lot of colleges there for some reason. But anyway, so this, even though Scarred Lands fantasy setting geography kind of is fuzzy, this actually makes sense to me. I was like, okay, yeah, more Summervale, all right, but it's a little bit more nicer than that. Like they don't get winter there. Like they have like multiple growing seasons, so really nice place. Not very big though. And then there's the Winter Vale, which isn't that it's really winter all year round, and they make it a point of that. It's not like winter all year round. It's just not. It doesn't have that abundance that the Summervale does. So it's like more, and it's closer to the mountains. So it's where they have a lot of mines. It's right near some of the mountainous areas. So they do a lot of mining there, and a lot of um, and that's like something the Hollow Knights are really interested in, because despite what they were as soldiers, what they become more smiths and crafters in this new life they've built for themselves. So their ore is very very useful to them. And then there's a couple of options. There's this place called the Citadel. Not a lot of information about that in any of the books, but it's like, I think it was one of the forts that they had built that got converted into something of a city once the people came in and went, let's build a sewage system. Okay. And they built this city. It's much smaller than the Golden City that Fran was talking about. There's the Golden City. There's some other places near the Golden City, like some villages at the foot of the mountain. There's a place called Forge, for example, which is a little bit confusing. I'll get to why in a bit. And then there's finally a place called Mount Ellis. And this is in both old lore and new lore. Old lore stipulates that Mount Ellis is the holiest site in the valley, more holy than the Golden City. It's just like, really holy. And they literally did this massive consecrate spell there. In the old lore, two things happen in this location. One, this is where Corean stood and declared, basically, screw it to the parents. We're going to destroy the rule of the Titans. We're going to do this. And this is where Corean basically declared his intent upon taking down the parent Titans. He just presumably stood here and gave a speech or something. And then 180 odd, or not 180 odd years later, just 80 odd years later, Chardoon then gave a big speech in the same place, saying, "I'm done with this alliance. Go fuck yourselves to the other gods," and buggered off after the war. So this is where Chardoon gives his big speech. So two big divine godly speeches.
I'm going home.
Yeah, basically. And it's like, I'm not, he doesn't dissolve the divine truce, but he's like, all right, I won't act against a god directly because I saw, what happened back there, but my people are no longer allied with your people, okay? Your people are weird, we're gonna do our thing, and he buggers off. But then in Rust, they introduced the third thing, which is that they said this is where the Hollow Legionnaires' bodies were buried, or interred, or located. This is where Vangel did his desecration.
Hollow Knights' bodies?
Hollow Knights. Did I say Legionnaires again? I keep doing that.
Yeah.
This is where the Hollow Knights' bodies were
It's
buried.
really easy.
It's so easy. This is where the Hollow Knights were buried. So, and this is where, and I don't know if Vangel's desecration was before or after Chardoon's speech. Probably after. And it was like, well, shit.
Probably during.
He's talking. Vangel's just over there in the corner. Oh, were these yours? Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, so they added that third thing to this specific location, and then the Corean came in and went, or his priest or somebody came in and went, consecrate. It's a blessed place. Yes, some bad things happen here, but some good things happen here too. And so this is like holy ground and like a site of pilgrimages, and presumably Hollow Knights come up here going, my body was here, it's gone now, I'm feeling sad or something. I don't know. But this is the locations in the Gleaming Valley that's kind of just interesting.
Yeah. Important things happened here.
Very important, and anywhere where a god walked is a big deal, really. So there's that. So those are some of the locations. Both books and Rust, I noticed, mirrors in layout, at least so far. Who knows what they're going to do in the final version of Rust, but right now mirrors the Galspad campaign setting book. Similar format, so it's like they took it, just expanded on it. So you see things like, there's sort of a template that talks about population, government, ruler, capital, blah, 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 in both books, and then it'll go into sections about government and how that works, and the flora and fauna and all these other things. So it's kind of interesting there, and just bouncing between the two and seeing the differences. In both books, it's described as a constitutional meritocracy. which is neat, although interesting, because so you get rewarded based on what you've done, which makes sense for a bunch of constructs.
Mhm.
So like the guy we made our king is the guy who did the most stuff in the war. Okay, that works. The guys we made our other leaders are people who have experience, so that makes sense. Does it carry over when you go to a different race of people who aren't all identical
Right.
constructs? I don't know. um,
It's the first version of it that's actually worked, and so
it is, yeah.
I
So
I like to think that, it's a slowly evolving process, and that as problems come up, they're like, okay, let's figure out how to address that. So,
and so their leader is just called the king. As I said, like they don't really have names. He's the king, or the Golden King in the new lore. I think it's the Golden King. And they're the Golden City is the capital, and then the other big major city is the Citadel that I mentioned.
yeah, the Citadel is it's a city, but it is also a fortress. It's basically sort of like it's there to be ugly so that the Golden City can be pretty. It's the the linchpin of the defense for the Golden City.
And in the old lore, it's described as it was built to honor Almalthea, as I mentioned before, and they designed it looking a lot like Almalthea's layout, as sort of
Yeah.
this was sort of their template for building the Citadel. And I would not be surprised if they built the Citadel before they built the Golden City as sort of a experiment, and then built the Golden City as like, well, that looked okay. Let's do it again, but on a grand scale on the top of a mountain. So. But the Citadel would be one of those, like, if the valley is ever invaded, it would be hit first, kind of a thing. And I don't know who would want to invade the Gleaming Valley.
Mhm.
Okay. So kind of, and then there's some bits on flora and fauna and various things in culture and crime and punishment. Crime and punishment's interesting. Crime is very rare, because you're dealing, I mean, there's certainly no intentional crime really among the constructs. I mean, not to say they never commit crimes, but they kind of are identical, so it would be weird. But there is crime, and they have basically 3 rules, which I thought was interesting, and this is consistent with both lore, old and new lore. Minor breach of character, which they consider an inconvenience, temporary harm, betrayal, or betray of duty, which is basically restitution for if you broke it, you pay for it, and community service of 7 to 14 days. Although I make the argument, should that be 8 to 16 days, because a week is 8 days on Scorn. But anyway, basic thing. Major breach of character. I love it. They're all breaches of character. Kind of, it's about flaws in character cause you to commit crimes, which I think is an interesting way of perspective that these constructs have. Major breach would be permanent harm to another, but not to the point of loss of livelihood or death, and that's basically another restitution. You pay for it, you broke it, you pay for it, and community service of 1 month to a year. And finally, destruction of life, which is either you killed somebody or you destroyed their livelihood, which I thought was a nice addition to that. So it's not just murder, it's also like, you burnt our building down and we no longer have our shop, kind of a thing. And although deliberate. And this is interesting, and to me, I'm amazed this isn't used as much in fantasy universes, is they literally stick you with a geas, an oath of atonement, and you are forced like by like, here's a curse we lay upon you that you will spend the next however long, depending on the level of crime that you committed, atoning for this. And so like, and magically required to, which is like, you hope that they take into account, if they're doing this to a mortal, that they get to rest and stuff and not spend 24/7 shoveling poo.
Well, they do, but
poo.
they do, but we're not monsters. We're just going to make you behave.
Yeah. So and that those would include they can't use arms or against other sentient being except to protect themselves, and those are their companions. And this is completely locked in. And I'm just like, I'm amazed this doesn't take place more in fantasy universes, that like your crime and your punishment, they don't have prisons. And so it's like, nope, this is the thing. So I thought that was kind of neat, and that pretty much carries into Rust as well, although they don't get into quite that level of detail. All right, and then all right, I'm gonna stop talking about the background stuff and get into everything what people actually want to know, which is who the hell are these Legionnaires? Sarah's boring us in the middle with trivial things. So they build this. They built the city. They built the valley. They've got the Citadel. They've got the Golden City. They've got all these wonderful things, and they've kind of finished. They're like, we've built civilization. We're protecting the people. We're doing our thing. We want more. We're bored again.
We're living around mortals again, and we're remembering all the shit we can't do anymore.
Sad. We want a legacy. And so they go to Corean and they go, we want a legacy. We've got this city, but cities aren't legacy. They're nice and everything, but we want to build something that will go on, beyond us. And well, we're technically immortal. We don't expect necessarily to be around. We want to create something that will continue who we are and what we're about. So Corean was like, well, I'm interpreting that as you want children? They're like, I guess, or we guess. So Corean helps them build. It basically is like, I will give you the secret of how I made you, and I will let you make more of you. And they're like, yes,
well,
we want that.
Not exactly the same
that
thing.
That isn't exactly how it works. Yeah. I'm simplifying it. And he helps them build these 5 spires just outside of the Golden City, and each one is based on a metal. So adamantine, iron, gold, silver, and mithril. And they build these giant spiders, and literally, as like the ordinary people are watching this, and they're like, up there on that mountain, there's a god. You can hear him shouting orders and banging things on an anvil over there. And they're like, I can imagine all the gawkers. It was like, like, wow, this is really deep. From several miles away, watching this happen up on the hill, and they do it in like a month, like just really crazy fast, because Corean's literally there. Okay, put those, stack up the Lego bricks, and we're gonna make these spires. And then he's like, okay, good job. Enjoy, and they're like, okay. And these spires, and Fran will probably correct me on this, as I understand it, draw in, kind of like he grabbed a bunch of souls of his followers. They draw in souls throughout Skarn, people who haven't moved on. So when people die in the Scarred Lands, generally, back in the day before the gods, they would go through what they call the Door of Wood, which is, literal or metaphysical, I don't know, but they would go through this door of wood and be reincarnated. And that was the way things worked for millennia. Then the gods showed up and they made the various heavens and hells, and their followers were given a choice. Instead of going through the Door of Wood, they could go to their respective afterlives. Well, a lot of spirits of souls of people are like, screw both options, I'm not leaving. And choose not to be reincarnated, choose not to go to their respective afterlife, and somehow remain on Skarn as ghosts and spirits and whatever. So these spires have this ability to basically call them to them and be like, you want to come here, and you get to live again.
And to be a little bit more specific, it calls out to people who basically died with a feeling of like, no, I'm not finished, and that are so anxious to be out doing stuff that they can't even bear to be reincarnated. They're left with this sense of drive and no way to fulfill it.
There was a lot of these in the Divine War, because there was millions of people who died in that war, and plus, all the other people who've just been through various disasters in the war, who feel like their lives were unfulfilled, and don't want to get reincarnated, but want to go and do just have that sense. So these spires would call them in, and then the Hollow Knights built armor to put these spirits into, just the way their spirits in these, you know, identical suits of plate mail. They just started building armor and like, okay, you get to be alive again in armor. But what's interesting is the Hollow Knights, you open the little shield and there's just black and nothing and an echoey voice. These spirits kind of created sort of translucent flesh. Like, they have a face, and the face looks a lot like their face in their former life. They're all about the same size because they fill in these suits of armor, and all the Hollow Knights made them pretty much like them, so they're all like human in proportion. But they look like those because unlike the Hollow Knights, who don't really have a sense of who they used to be, these spirits do have a sense a little bit of who they used to be. That kind of sense memory of, you know, I was a halfling who fought in the Divine War and tried to defend my village from rampaging Titan spawn. And they might not know they don't know the details. They definitely don't know the details. They might know their name or a little bit of some of the major events that they did. They don't remember their whole lives, but they remember just enough of just their last life. They're not like an incarnate who remembers all of their previous lives. They remember their most recent life, the one they lived before they got pulled into this fire. And again, like dreams, bits and pieces.
Which isn't to say that you couldn't have a Hollow Legionnaire that is also an incarnate.
That would be weird.
Yeah, but there's nothing stopping a player from being a Hollow Legionnaire.
No.
Right.
No. A Hollow Legionnaire incarnate, that would be interesting, because incarnates, well, I guess it would depend on what your last life was. Because incarnates have an ability, if they live long enough, to choose how they're going to get reincarnated. But if an incarnate died before they got that ability, yeah, they died very young, they could end up as a Hollow. That would be interesting. Like, I was meant to go for the Dwarven and get reincarnated. That's my deal.
I was supposed to go get to... Yeah, crap, I can't remember now.
Right? I was going down this way, but then there was a shiny thing over here, and I went this way, and now here I am in this... What? Why am I here?
What's interesting is if they became a druid, how that would work, because the armor is metal. So would they...
Yeah.
Because the way I picture it is, and this is interesting, is that a Hollow Legionnaire can change their armor. So when they possess the armor, and then the armor it changes magically to take on traits like if they'd been really like an astrologer in their past life, for example. I throw this out as a random thing, and they enter this armor. Suddenly, the armor would manifest like stars on it. Constellations would appear on their armor. Or if they were a hunter, maybe on their armor would be animals or something like that.
Yeah.
So the armor would suddenly just get these decorations that fit the personality of the person, and they're all unique. So unlike the Hollow Knights, who are like, my only differentiation is this little bar that says my rank, or wherever it is. I don't know where it is. But these guys, their whole armor would be decorated. And what I imagine is, and this is kind of headcanon on my part, is that the Hollow Knights don't know what each Legionnaire was before they become like themselves, and they're like, here's your plate mail, and they go into plate mail, and then they're like, I don't really belong in plate mail, and they're like, oh, okay, we have some backup other armor that you might like better, and like, you know, a few days later, they're now you're gonna be in studded leather, you know. They can possess a different armor.
Or they have spell sleeve, which is a non-metal, essentially like a ninja sock, so that they can be wizards and sorcerers and not have to try and run around with plate mail, because that's unfortunate when you're a wizard.
And that don't count against the whole wizard wearing armor, because the thing is, in order for them to be physical, they basically possess the armor. They need the armor, and the armor has to cover at least 2/3 of their body. So their arms and legs and head stick out, but they don't really have bits. They don't eat. They are again like the constructs. They don't need to eat. They don't need to breathe. They don't need to drink. They don't need to sleep. They can eat and drink. I don't know if they can sleep. They can't eat and drink if they want to. So like you can give a Hollow Legionnaire a healing potion, for example.
Right.
Or they can just be like, yes, I will join you at dinner, but they don't need to. So it's sort of
as far as
optional experience.
Game rules go, you are a humanoid with a construct body type. So if somebody casts spells on you that would not heal you, such as any healing spell that is in the SLPG or the player's handbook, it works on you because you are considered a humanoid, even though the spell specifically says it doesn't work on constructs and undead. You get that benefit.
You're not.
Right.
And you're not technically a construct or undead, which is interesting. You are and you're not undead in that you were more like you were resurrected. Just resurrected without a body.
Right.
Or with a body, but your body is a suit of armor that you can change in a short rest.
Yeah.
As in the 5e rules, in the Pathfinder rules a little bit different, but the gist of it is you can spend time concentrating and literally kind of into a new suit of armor when you want to, which is handy if you're like, I found magical +2 armor and it's way better than my old armor. I'm kind of moving into it.
Yeah. I will say, so I'm just going to throw my own headcanon out here because this is how I play, or because I've never played. No, I'll take that back because this last week I played in Travis's Fight in the Shade game. So that was my first Hollow Legionnaire. But as far as DMing games with Hollow Legionnaires in it, I've had the question a lot myself, and players have asked me, why, if these are just spirits that have come back for these reasons, can I not look like a halfling? Or can I not look like a ironbred or whatever? And to me, absolutely, go for it. Even though it says, they're all kind of human looking, I have them appear however they want to because they were these other people. And it says you come back looking kind of like you did in your previous life. And so even though the books don't say you can, I absolutely let my players do that.
The way I do it is your facial features and maybe so if you were, say, a dwarf in your past life.
Right.
You're now a dwarf who's 5'10".
So you're very
but you
stocky.
have sort of mildly foreshortened arms and your facial features are like that of a dwarf. And you're like trying to cope with the fact that you used to be 4 feet tall and now you're like 1.5 to 2 feet taller and you're trying to not trip over your own feet.
I was going to say the first couple of months you're a lot of spatial distortion. Why is everything so far away?
Far away. Yeah, exactly. Or flip that and you were like maybe a giant, because who knows? No one says they have to be divine humanoids. So you were a giant and now you're only, around 6 feet tall, and you used to be 10 feet tall, and you're like, but you still have that kind of giant features.
Yeah.
So I that's my headcanon. The way I do it is, yes, you could have been a halfling. Now you look humanish, because they're all, the one thing they would do say is they are all medium. So I would say yes, you're medium, but you still have kind of the because you don't get any of the racial bonuses of being
right.
So you don't dark vision.
Yeah. I don't.
Any of that stuff.
When I'm DMing, I don't ever have them take on any of their previous life stuff because this is the body they're given. It's just more of a, this is what you look like.
Flavor text color, totally.
Yeah,
and
totally
they should. So if one was an ironbred, they're gonna have like one of a horse face. It's gonna be weird. They're like, I need a special helmet because it's not gonna fit. and the Hollow Nades are like, I guess we have to change the helmet design, and it isn't working. So I imagine like a lot, like they stick you in the plate mail by default, and then eventually they're like, we gotta move you into something that fits you a little better once you're up and about and wandering about. And they can't, as I said, they don't have to eat or sleep or any of those things. And when they die, which is interesting, and this is a negative on them because there's so many positives. It's like, oh, my Hollow Knight can stand watch all night long because they don't need to sleep. They still need to have, in 5e rules, he can only do light activity. So no training,
can't be. Yeah, exactly.
No, like running a forced march, but you can still be like reading a book or playing a very easy board game. That
you still can get exhaustion, which constructs and undead don't get, but you are not one of those.
Yes, so you don't need to sleep or meditate, but you do need to chill for 8 hours.
Yeah.
It's always like, so you have to be like doing something really relaxing. You can't be like, I'm gonna play chess. No, it's too emotional. You can.
You're such an angry loser.
Busy.
It's not restful.
Don't spend your long rest playing Monopoly. That will get you all upset, and it's not relaxing enough. You need to be chilling. So, don't read a Grisham novel. Read, something chilling. Anyway, so read a boring history book. I have no idea. I'm going off in the weeds now. So, but when they die, or when they drop to 0 hit points, if they're not healed right away and then they die, you've only got a minute to bring them back. Well, that's the thing about it, is their soul will like now it's going where it belongs.
Right.
Whether this current life is a legionnaire or the past life they had, it's no more second chances. You're going through that door, or you're going up to the respective divine plane. You've got a minute to bring them back.
Right.
And so, yeah, be aware of that. Is if you don't have a cleric on hand within those 10 rounds to go bring them back, with the 1,000 gold necessary to do a revivify, you're rolling up a new character.
Yeah.
So that's the one restriction. True resurrection or wish will work, but short of a 9th level spell, they're not coming back. And yeah, so there's that. In the SLPG, when Scarlet Player Guide came out, they first introduced this race, and they had all those things I just described. But they gave them, and this is kind of getting into some of the new stuff, but they gave them a +2 to any stats that you want, because it's like whatever fit your previous life, do it whatever you want. So there's that great flexibility. Youngman's Guide came out earlier this year, and Youngman's Guide Part 1 introduced a new variant called the Hollow Legionnaire Revisited. And I love this variant, and this is what I always run with now when I run with this race, is they now get a +1 in any stat, and then a +1 in a specific stat based on their sub-race. And they introduce these 5 sub-races based on what spire you were born out of. And I love this because it adds a lot more background flavor. You kind of give a bit of character to these, and they also added a special ability for each spire. So if you want to go with the new 5e, your stat isn't dependent on your race anymore, it could just still be that +2 in anything. But you also get that additional thing where, for example, if your gold's a chord, which means you came from the gold spire, you can cast the light cantrip because you're like gold and goldy and all this stuff. And you have advantage on saving throws against being charmed. So Gold Spire gives you that. Or the Silver Spire, you're very kind of more wise and understanding of people, and you get proficient in the insight skill and advantages on being charmed, being frightened, and are immune to exhaustion, which is like, holy crap, that's a pretty awesome thing. So immune to exhaustion, and you are, it's like, so Silver Spire means you can do heavy activity during your long rest. So anyway, there's these 5 spires. Check out Youngman's for the details on each one. And I think they add nice beefiness to kind of an already overpowered race. So I mean,
it is the Scarred Lands, so like, are there overpowered races? I mean, there's some that are underpowered.
No,
Yeah.
I would say Scarred Lands, every race is more more powered up than
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, for the setting, is it really overpowered, or are there just severely underpowered races? Like, I feel like halflings might be a little underpowered for Scarred Lands. That's just me.
Well, I would say,
but
when the player handbook came out and I read the description of halflings, my reaction was, why would I ever play something that wasn't a halfling?
That's
because
fair.
of that luck roll. And now it's like, okay, now I have reasons to play something that's not a halfling. I thought they were kind of crazy, at least in lower levels. So Youngman's Guide adds to that. And Rust doesn't expand on the Legionnaires much. They just expand on the setting. So anyway, that's what it means to be these Legionnaires. Now, Rust does add on setting-wise, which I absolutely loved this. And admittedly, I am 100% biased, as my wife wrote it. The complexity of these constructs, creating these children who are, and I want to point this out, Legionnaire can be any class, any alignment. Hollow Knights, they're all basically paladin fighters. They're all worshippers of Corean, and their Hadrada is sort of an addition. Those who worship Hadrada, it's like, and we worship Hadrada, but they're all followers. They're pretty much all lawful good. And there may be a few exceptions, but those are because something weird happened to them. The Legionnaires can be anything, because Corean is like, I'm getting them all from my heaven. Legionnaires came from all over the place, so you could be anything. You could be a warlock who worships a demon. And the Hollow Knights have to cope with that one of their kids is kind of evil, and they may leave home once they're old enough to work this out, but they could be anything, and I loved that. Frank, could you tell us about the Shining Peak?
Yeah, Sarah's asked if I'd be willing to read a small section from the introduction to the Golden City. 50 years ago, the Shelzari romantic poet Crianin Pum called the Golden City a clockwork mausoleum, beautiful yet barren. He would be stunned to see it today. The city's austere magnificence and symmetry are rapidly giving way to something new, vibrant, unruly growth that is infusing the place with its own beauty. The growth comes from two sources: the influx of mortal visitors from across Skarn, and the ebullient progeny of the Hollow Knights, the Hollow Legionnaires. The Hollow Knights built the city for themselves. While it was lovely and incredibly defensible, it was also impractical and inhospitable for anyone with a need to sleep or eat. The Knights built dormitories to house themselves, each cubicle barely larger than a man. Their beautiful arboreta and gardens didn't produce crops. There wasn't even a marketplace. Change began almost as soon as the city opened. The Knights added visitor quarters near the East Gate. When that space overflowed, they constructed on the East Causeway what's now called the Living Quarter. Given the causeway's immense scale, this new neighborhood of inns, shops, restaurants, houses, businesses, and stables could grow for decades and not be full. But the biggest change came when Corean granted the Knights' wish to reproduce. Hollow Legionnaires, their souls drawn from those with too much sense of purpose and drive to go to rest or even wait for reincarnation, are born with the intense energy of children, but also the power, skills, and sensibilities of an adult. Given their lack of memory or identity, it takes time, often a few years, for them to bring it all into harness. And so, like children, they play, passionately and often with great skill. Where once the city's buildings were all clean lines and bare marble or granite, a growing number have intricate bas-reliefs or mosaics in styles from across Gelspad and beyond. Legionnaires play games of skill on city lawns and run through the streets, shouting joyfully. They perform concerts and plays at stages on the Grand Commons. They play elaborate pranks on their instructors at the Lyceum and the Academy. The Hollow Knights struggled to adjust to their parental responsibilities at first, but mortals in the city and Greater Valley stepped up to teach them. Today, with the help of these siblingers, as such volunteers are called, the Knights have grown into proud and successful, if sometimes perplexed, parents who revel in the liveliness of their offspring. Siblingers are an important part of readying new Legionnaires to enter the world. Stribok Steelmane, an elderly ironbred born in the valley, represents the group in the Council of Tears. 1 to 4 siblingers stay close to each Legionnaire throughout their forge years, until they decide to go out into the world. Some Legionnaires remain close to their siblingers even after, while, as with many family, others are glad to be free of theirs. Any visitor Steelmane meets will inevitably be asked to look in on a sibling of ours on their travels, either in the visitor's homeland or wherever they're going next. Steelmane treats every Legionnaire as an honored sibling. The thought that anyone is lost, lonely, or fallen weighs on his heart.
No, as I said, I'm biased because, you know.
I was pretty happy with
But
how it turned out.
I love this. I love this. I love this whole
But
section.
yeah,
I
it was the you know the 3X lore had these kind of ridiculous beings that built this city that really just I got handed the map and was told make sense of it, and I was like, it doesn't make sense, and then I was like, maybe that's how it makes sense.
yeah.
And so the idea that this part of the reason that these guys are followers of Corean and Hadrada, but they're so cool, is the fact that like they're remembering what it is to be alive again. They're really coming back to life by virtue of all of this life erupting around them.
I just imagine that the Hollow Knights are just experiencing this profound joy as they watch their Legionnaires discover things and do things. And probably profound disappointment, and a few of them are going, my daughter is an evil warlock. How did that happen? But for the most part, just seeing these Legionnaires just come to life and watching them go from like that dramatic like breathe in, I'm alive again, encased in weird armor and not knowing, understanding what happened to me, to as they discover themselves and they needed help. So they're like, and these volunteers, the people who lived in the valley were like, we want to help with this. This is cool and neat. And
yeah,
it's what happens when you have an area.
I don't know why.
Right. But it's what happens when you have like an area that isn't constantly being threatened by Titan spawn and all of this crap. So you have this like ability to be nice people.
Yeah.
And a lot of the Legionnaires, all the Legionnaires have this connection to the Gleaming Valley. This is where they grew up. And the Legionnaires haven't been around that long.
Right.
So this is fairly new. I don't think there's any that are older than 40, I think.
Yeah.
I think they started this about 40 years ago in terms of, it's AV 150. So they're still, they don't know how long they live. Are they immortal like the Hollow Knights, or do they have a set lifespan? It's not clear. They can be slain. That's about all we know. So we don't know if they die of old age, but many of them just remain. And the population of Gleaming Valley is now, because they've been just having kids like mad, is now grown up. So that before it was 90% Hollow Knights, now it's 50% Hollow Legionnaires. And the Hollow Knights never leave the valley unless there's a crisis.
Right.
Then Corean or whoever they we will go help defend, blah blah blah. But they pretty much stay in the valley. The Legionnaires, however, wander about for whatever reason. They want to learn, they want to see the world, they want to learn about their past lives. They want to just do something different. So Legionnaires, while they have that fundamental military upbringing, because they're all army brats basically, they go out, and most of them still have a love for the valley and will defend it. And if they call in and say, Legionnaires, we need you all, the vast majority of them will come back, except for that that evil warlock daughter. But the vast majority of them will come back and defend the valley if something happens. But they have been spreading out across Gelspad for about 20 years ish, maybe. And I think that's awesome. That's really interesting. So, am I right on those dates, Fran?
That sounds about roughly right. Yeah.
So that's kind of that. Then the rest of what we got is the details of the city itself, of the Golden City itself. This was previous to this, there was a map, and you just have these handful of locations. And again, as Fran said, the map is pretty nonsensical. So you have one of the coolest things is the Great Commons right in the middle of the city, and it's so not clear how big this is. They built this tribute to what Skarn, not Gelspad, but Skarn presumably, looked like prior to the war. So I'm assuming this includes like Enrilic and Asherak. I don't know if the Dragonlands are included because I don't know if they would have known about it, but I imagine
As much as they could kind of get their hands on.
So I imagine there's something that represents Termana and something that represents Asherak, and at least those 3 continents. And in this square in the middle of the city, and it sounds really cool. It's this mosaic, but they used tree. They like put a tree here, and it's like this represents the Ganges tree. This represents, you know, the Broadreach tree. And then they put like these little streams, like this little pool of water represents the blossoming sea, you know. and they actually you walk on paths and stuff that represent, I don't know, roads or borders or something. And this whole square is like this funky mosaic depiction of Skarn. So that's cool.
Yeah.
I want to see it. I want artwork of this so badly. I want to see what this looks like. It just sounds cool. But how big it is, I remember you were trying to figure out those dimensions because there was some struggle around how big the city is.
Yeah, we had the population numbers, but there wasn't really the scales were wildly conflicting. So I ended up doing a bunch of research into medieval cities and kind of going, all right, duh, and everybody went, yeah, okay, well, we'll take that. But yeah, it's the commons is it's still pretty huge.
To corporate case all that, even just one tree representing an entire forest, it's still, you know, that's still a lot. So that's kind of neat. And I mean, I'd love to see it just to kind of get an idea of what we can imagine Asherak would look like pre-war, and Termana would look like pre-war, because those particular locations were so devastated. So neat. There's that. Then there's the academy, presumably where Ada Hollow Knights would train, but also now it's really for the Hollow Legionnaires to like learn all the things they have to relearn, because as I said, they don't come with really necessarily memories. So it's like, how do you learn the new languages and how to read and write and do math and, you know, use a fork and everything, all that stuff, history and all of that. There's the Lyceum. What's the difference between the Lyceum and the Academy?
Oh boy.
I asked a hard question. Sorry about
that. The Lyceum, if I remember right, the Lyceum is more about sort of historical and military knowledge, and the Academy is more about sort of research and experimentation, I think is probably the best way of summing it up.
And then there's, oops, I lost my place. The Concordat. Three-domed edifice that houses the Council of Tears. The Council of Tears is how their government works. It's divided into six concepts that they kind of divide both the military and the government into these 6 precepts based on the 2 gods, dividing Corean into the sword, the shield, and the forge, which the sword is about offensive and defensive and balance, and the shield is about protecting, the forge is about crafting, and then Hadrada, it's split into the hammer, the lash, and the scale, which it disturbed me that the lash was brought up here. But the hammer is about conviction and loyalty. The lash is a symbol of power, about being a statesman, and about civilization, which I was just like, lash is also for, you know, bad things, but I don't know. I guess it does enforcing the rules. And then finally the scales, which the old lore didn't go into, like, and then there's the scales and it's new, and then it didn't say what it was. That was like, what? The new lore does actually describe what the heck the scales was. If I can find it. My notes. Scales stands for political shrewdness, tempered with equity for the good of civilization. That's cool. I like that it was equity, too. Not equality or Yeah. Fairness and all that. So that's interesting. And then they split both, as I said, both the militaries split into these tiers based on kind of what you do, and each I guess they're called Legion or Company or whatever. Each group will have representatives from all 6 tiers, although some of them may just be like one guy. It's like, we've got one guy here from the Lash because we don't really need that much here because we're doing this kind of work or whatever. So in terms of their military, I believe that's from the old lore. That's kind of interesting. Where was I? I was talking about the various buildings. So that's how the concordant, all those various tiers meet there. There's also a bunch of like municipal offices and various other buildings. And then there's the temples to Corean and Hadrada that are just phenomenally huge and like the biggest building, the tallest buildings in the city. And then you have these 4 gates and 8 guardians. And because, as Fran said, it's built in the middle of this caldera lake, which is presumably a good mile-plus sized lake. Big crater lake looking thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if the island was there and they expanded it, or they built an island, or they magicked up an island.
Most stratovolcano caldera, there tends to be sort of a smaller cone in the middle of the big cone. So yeah, the water gets shallower towards the middle at the very least.
So they built this basically round island there, and 4 causeways going out in the very Corean, that cross. And these massive 100 feet tall, 100 feet wide gates at each of these causeways, and they're flanked by these massive colossal statues on each side of each gate. A man and a woman on each side, which is, I found interesting, because do the Hollow Knights even differentiate?
It's interesting, actually. One thing that is in the canon now is that because the Hollow Legionnaires kind of they're very jumbled up, and a lot of what was in them before doesn't necessarily come through the process of revivification. More than average among Hollow Legionnaires, you run into people who are like, I know I had a gender, I just don't really remember what it was, and I don't really care. So you've got a lot more non-binary Legionnaires because I have other shit on my mind, and I'm not really doing anything much with this except, chopping wood and helping people. So
presumably the Legionnaires can't breed either.
And that's what I was about to say, is like, it's never really been brought up, but that's been my assumption, is that they are construct body. They don't need junk because they can't use it to make babies.
There is debate. It differs from being to being. I speaking as a writer and as a potential DM, if you said, my Hollow Legionnaire character is in love with this person and plans to seduce them, that is definitely possible. You might very well have bits. I don't think you could have a child, but yeah.
You could enjoy yourself.
Yes, very definitely. It depends on what your image is of who and what you are. The stuff that mattered to you is the stuff that comes back. So like
and you created a character.
Yeah, there's an NPC.
Mattered.
There's an NPC for whom stuff really did matter, who's kind of in contrast to this, who doesn't go by but is called by the nickname Codpiece. So
is that like the only piece of armor that he was like summoned back into?
He is a very manly man. And apparently that was an important enough part of his identity that is definitely reflected in his physique. So
for some reason I'm just envisioning Conan as a Hollow Legionnaire, where it's just like this furry codpiece and that's it.
Well, yeah. It's the whole, because remember, 3/4 has to be covered in armor.
Yeah.
So his armor has sculpted pecs.
Yeah,
he's like A sculpted beard.
Yep, exactly. So he's a wonderful character. He's the friend you want to have and the enemy you want to avoid, basically.
He's actually the captain of the city,
City
basically the
Watch.
City Watch. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
by Captain Brevin. I
Yeah.
just loved when she talked about him. Like, I love this character, and a lot of the other writers of Rust ran with him. And
Nice.
like, oh yes,
Nice.
oh yes, this is a great character.
We came up with the nickname first, and then everybody was just like, "Yeah, this guy's got to be a thing." Mhm.
I know, I love this
Yeah.
character, and he's
So
got
is
he's
there
got
is
full
there
depth.
art for him, or will there be art for him in Rust?
Hopefully there will be. I have
Hope
no
so.
idea.
Because
I would love it. If not, I may commission something at some point just
right?
because I want to. I mean,
We
he's
can up our backer pledge and make them do Brevin.
Well, yeah. So that's what I was
He
thinking. Because
is-
like one of the backer pledges is to have art done, and like maybe
Mhm.
I should be codpiece, or
I mean, I kind of picture oh crap, I can't remember the name of the hero from no, I can't remember the name of the anime. My Hero Academia. He's sort of that guy, except with a big, full, bushy beard, but it's that kind of, ha 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 ha, sort of heroic figure that
right?
that definitely
Like he's got to be portrayed by like the actor with
like
the big
Brian
voice.
Blessed kind of
Brian
thing.
Blessed, yeah.
He's a little more sane than that, but definitely.
Okay, a toned down Brian Blessed.
Yep. Hmm.
So, where was I? Okay, yeah. So those are locations in the city, and we're getting into the NPCs now. So and then Fran. So those are the original. All the locations I just mentioned were in the original books, and then in the new lore, all bunch of new locations have been added because the old lore didn't have things like shops and
Yeah.
inns and stuff. And obviously, if adventurers, because this is supposed to be in Rust, the major location you go to as an adventuring party, and the quests, assuming you follow the full campaign, will eventually bring you here, and you will have quests here and all of that business. And so there's a whole mess of locations and side quests and quest hooks, like just a massive nest of stuff. And this branch, I don't know if you can zoom in on the map. When you look at the east gate or east causeway, and these causeways, the map makes it look like they're like little gray things. How wide are these causeways? Like
They're at least 200 feet.
200 feet wide. Plus, if they're 200 feet wide, they're gonna be like, I don't know,
Yeah.
half a mile long or something.
Yeah,
They're really
exactly.
long.
Yeah, they're immense. They're freaking cyclopean.
Yeah, and they go down at the end of the east one. The east one is the one that goes like leaves the city basically. So the west one goes to the spires. The north and south ones go to these kind of mountain quarries where they dug up a bunch of the stuff to make the city and still used to get stuff today. The eastern one goes to, there's a road, sort of a road, vaguely call it a road, that goes down the mountain. It's like this twisty, and another thing Fran basically invented with the folks from who wrote Rust.
Well, we
This
worked
twisty-
together to come up with a lot of this stuff,
Yeah, yeah. So you didn't do this in a vacuum by any means. The caldera, when the lake gets high, it'll flow over this side of the caldera in a waterfall. Presumably the caldera is fed from like snowmelt, I guess, because this whole peak is around it with these mountains.
Mhm.
And there's a picture in the west. You look at the west side, and there's these 5 spires, shining metal. But the place must look gorgeous. So waterfall. There's a gate there by the waterfall that leads down to this passage. And then there's this other thing that was in the old map that was like a what the fuck thing on the map, which off between the northern passage and the eastern passage, there's docks?
Because cities have docks.
So do explain what you've done with that.
Yeah. So again, the whole idea is these legionnaire or the knights kind of built what they remembered about cities, and they built all the stuff that they remembered being important, and docks was one of the things. And
They could like fish or something in the lake, but
there are some very few flying ships on Skarn, but they're exceedingly rare, and those do occasionally land there and deliver cargo and stuff. But
like 2 a year.
yeah, but for a long time it was kind of a running joke of like, so you guys got docks up here? Mm-hmm. Yeah, for all those boats that you get in from the nearby connected seas.
Oh
no,
you're not going up this waterfall. I can tell you that.
Yeah, but recently, in the last 10 years, I think, a group of students at the academy kind of went, but why not? And did a bunch of research and built this, or rebuilt, there's some contradictions about exactly what happened, this gate out there, this enormous black stone gate. And ships started coming through from the blossoming sea. And it came out that they built another gate out on one of the northwestern islands. I can't remember.
I believe it was.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly which one, but basically they created a magical gate. So there is now actually ship traffic from way far western Gelspad coming directly to central Gelspad through the Golden City, which
has to make it so much easier for trade and for the living to get food and stuff, because it's not like there are a bunch of fertile fields just outside the city.
Well, there's the Summervale, and that's it.
The Summervale actually does a pretty good job of feeding most of the population, but as the city's growing, that's gonna change.
Yeah, but they're also not in the city. They're not like right there. You still have to go down that Golden Road, which let me go over to. Kind of drag it over, but
I should point out all of this, the map that you guys are seeing and hopefully laughing at is all just crap I sketched up so that we would have a reference. I believe the plan is that in the final version there's going to be, a nice pretty map but drawn by somebody who's not just a goofy monkey with a copy of Inkscape.
This is a pretty good map. I'm not going to say it's not. So, I mean...
Yeah, I mean, it's the old city map overlaid. Fran added the shores, the caldera, expanded the causeways, and added the land gate and the waterfall and all of that business. So, and this wonderful little piece of art that I love. And you can see that little gray line going, and that's supposed to be the pathway going down. So I imagine like carts with very sturdy mules going up the switchbacks.
Yep.
Yeah, hopefully it's switchbacks. It's not just like a slope, because I mean, going down would be pretty easy, but going up would suck real bad.
It's switchbacks, and there are guard posts and even kind of like resting spots every once in a while. And a lot of that was in Mind to Defense, but then the Ironbred were kind of like, by the way, people are not going to be able to just walk straight the fuck up this thing. You're going to be able to need to stop along the way when they get tired, and the knights are like,
this tired?
Right, tired. I'm tired. God, tired sucked. How do you people put up with that?
And there's an inn, I believe, at the top of it called the Airy.
Yeah.
Nice.
Owned by was it a dwarf? Let's say it was a dwarf.
A dwarf, a one-armed dwarf woman who she used to run caravans because people told her she couldn't.
Nice.
She was like, I will kick your ass with one arm. So she basically went about doing that and then made enough money and was like, and now I'm going to retire because being a caravaneer sucks.
And then we've got some really interesting locations in the living quarter of the city. So these are all new. There's multiple inns described. There's barracks where you can find Captain Brevin. There's some shops, because you think about what GMs want, what PCs are going to do. They're going to want a place to sleep. They're going to want a place to shop. So there's some shops. There's some place for quests. So there's actually a call it a Zamzi Express messenger service. So I'm guessing that PCs could be hired by them to like and deliver a message across town for a thing or have that
very much so.
Everything. So these are just kind of fun locations. And there's also a mention of Edentines, is that how you say it?
Ebentine.
Oh, is my typo. Ebentine's Table.
Which is less a location and more an event. There is criminal life in the city. It's just really on the down low and really subtle. Because, again, if you get caught, you end up standing out in the streets, shoveling horse shit and saying, "Greetings, traveler. How can I help you? I humble myself before you in the way that is good and just." And your old criminal buddies come by and laugh their asses off at you. So Ebentine is rumored to be a person who runs the table, but the table moves constantly. The description of who Ebentine is really vague, except that they are supposed to be an ironbred, probably. And so you can tell how far up you are in the criminal hierarchy of the city by how far in advance you know where the next Ebentine's table
It's not an
will be.
ironbred, it's just an elf in a horse mask.
It could be. Yeah, we don't know. Those who do know haven't lived to tell.
Yeah, so there's that. And then you created these 3 dudes that I adore, but this is so spoiler country for so players.
Yeah, if you're players, you want to stick your fingers in your ears and go la 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 for a little bit. We needed villains, but again, they have to be subtle because you're in the city full of the most goodiest goody two shoes ever. So there's this group called the Saboteurs. The nickname was created by one of their members, Galiva, who is a male worshiper of Mormo, who is convinced that these basically it's 3 people, and each of them works for a different faction, and there's a phrase from the tech world, cooperation. They work together to try to dick each other over and to extract as much use from the Golden City as possible before they overthrow and destroy it. One of them, Galiva, is a worshiper of Mormo. Another one, Cassis Oreen, is actually an agent for Calastia. And the third one, Saral of Lave, is actually an agent of Dear Drendal, who's there to do research that might possibly help free their god from his torment.
Because as we talked about ages ago, the god of the Drendalia elves, the underground elves, is a construct. This was his body was put in that of a construct.
Yep.
And it's interesting because all of these people are constructs. So how does this work? And can we use
what secrets can we steal from this, Ted? Because Nalthalos, is kind of in the god equivalent of an iron lung. And these Hollow Legionnaires are happy, bouncy little fuckers. So can we get some of that for Nalthalos? So we've got 3 factions, basically. Galiva thinks these people are abominations and that this whole place needs to be burned and then salted and then burned again. Cassis Oreen is fine with the city being burned and salted because they're goody-goodies, but wants to get as much information about the immortality of these beings as possible for Verduk first. And then there's Saral, who's in a really difficult position because when they first came to the city, they were like, I need to steal these secrets from my god. And then the city basically won them over. One, they realized that they were actually non-binary, and came out that way and were accepted. And 2, the people here are just good and kind in a way that if you're from Dear Drendal, you're told that people just aren't. And so they really believe that there's the potential for some kind of an alliance between these two groups, and they feel horrible now because they're thoroughly dug in and they can't reveal themselves to the city elders and be like, "Hi, so funny story," because, well, they're lawful goody goodies, and we know how that ends. Shoveling horse shit in the street and abasing yourself to visitors. Um, but they really don't want the other ones to burn down the city. So they're sort of orbiting around each other, confounding one another's plots, and trying to do justice to their cause. And so I think it makes for a really interesting picture of villainy in the city that DMs can do a lot with, because you've got these different factions playing off against each other.
And each of these three... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so from your knowledge of Rust, and from what I've seen of the backer only previews that we've seen, how much of that is something that players get to actually do?
It definitely comes up in Rust.
At least Soral and Galiva are major characters.
Yeah, Soral and Galiva are important characters. You do get to interact at least a little bit with Cassius. Cassius and Soral are subtle. Galiva is about as subtle as a guy in a hockey mask with a bloody hatchet in his hand. Like, he literally has spells that we picked out for him because they were cool and had snakes. he's like a raving Mormon nutcase.
Nice.
There's this spell in I don't remember which book where your fingers turn into snakes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he just wanted that one. It's not really that he's a good melee fighter or anything, but snakes! Snake fingers! So...
Cool party tricks.
Yeah, so basically, if you need a classic mustache, wax, twisting, crazy horror, Galiva's your go-to. If you want somebody who's ambivalent and who could work on either side, you've got Soral. And then if you want somebody who's just fucking dangerous as hell, you've got Cassius Orine, who is the worst mix of both of them. Subtle and deadly.
To me is, I'm surprised Galiva is neutral evil and not chaotic evil, but
Mormo's neutral evil. Mama is neutral evil, and I have to follow the true path. He's neutral evil. He's neutral evil with poor self-control is basically what it is.
Nice.
All three of these characters are just Joe Schmo shopkeepers.
Mm-hmm.
That's the coolest part. Is there is Green Mother Herbs and Potions, where you can buy healing potions or herbal tonics, or restock your herbalism kit from this friendly gentleman named Galiva, who will sell you herbs.
Yeah.
And if you know the right words, he'll sell you poisons too.
Mm-hmm.
And Orine's trading, which is just, I think I don't know the details of Orine's trading, but
yeah,
it's like
they can get it for you. Whatever it is, they can and will get it for you, but it will cost, because she's a really shrewd business person.
Yeah, and so that'd be like, I want to get that +2 longsword. This could be one of the places you could get that. Good luck negotiating a decent price out of her. And then Soral, there's, as I mentioned before, the Zamzi Express, the messenger service.
Which is indispensable to the working in the city these days.
Yeah, and that's neat that you run on all three of them as just legitimate business folks who may have an underlying motive, an entire criminal underground. So I love it. I absolutely love it. And that's just a taste of some of the adventures in here. And the first half of chapter 4 in Rust is pretty much everything we talked about, but in greater detail. The second half, which I am not going to get into, is the plot. And there's oh my god, there's so much here. There's more NPCs, there's more locations. There's flavor text, for GMs who leverage that. There's some dungeons. Presumably there will be maps for them. There aren't maps yet, but presumably some of these will have maps. Small dungeons, like an 8-room building kind of a thing. There's encounters, both combat encounters and like skill checky plot-based encounters. There's mini quests, not really side quests, but sort of like action questy kind of things, with rewards. Plus there's the whole timeline of, as the Rust plot unfolds, how it impacts the Gleaming Valley and the Golden City, and random encounter tables, because those are fun. And just everything about rolling the PCs into this greater story. So like the second half of this chapter is all of that. So only read the second half if you're a GM, but the other half can certainly be absorbed by players, which is pretty amazing. I'm like, holy shit! There's so much here.
Yeah, yeah. When you take into, and we've talked about it before, but when you take into account the clan side quests on top of the side quests from the Golden City, I mean, you have so much stuff in this one book to play for a long time.
You could go full on Witcher with this and be like, well, I'm level 60 and I'm gonna walk into Glividatel and just own the place.
Yeah. Right.
Just to give a sense, everything we've talked about so far in Rust, I'm on page of chapter 4. I'm on page 12 of 46. The rest is all this other stuff.
And I also think it's interesting, like, as far as a Rust specific thing, Travis in chat brought it up earlier. So if you're in chat and you saw it, or if you're watching this later, not only do you have these side quests, but some of them unlock things, such as the Hollow Elves, which will be a completely separate thing, as far as I understand it, which is awesome. Like, I'm so excited for this campaign to come out.
Hollow Elves? What are the Hollow Elves? Oh, like Broadreach Elf, Hollow Legionnaire thing? Okay.
Friends.
It's literally the first I've heard of it.
Hemming and hawing.
Right.
Yeah, see, so Fran worked on this, but I was not privy to anything that I was privy to the things she wrote, because she needed to bounce ideas off of, but I was not privy to anything in this campaign setting that she didn't directly work on. So
honestly, it's so huge, there are sections of it that I haven't read.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But if you go and you back the Kickstarter right now, you get previews of a lot of this, and so if you're interested, you can get it. Yeah.
And this stuff, and oh my god, there's so much here. Yeah. Like, just I can't even. It's just an amazing resource for both. I would say both players and GMs, because there's also new spells and new magic items and the standard stuff you get in every 5e D&D book, but and they're not done yet. So despite the hundreds and hundreds of pages of new stuff, they're still coordinating and getting it all meshed together, and additional materials, assuming we get the stretch goals, and all the art and all the formatting.
Art is a big one.
Everything that kind of ties all that in together. And editing hasn't been edited yet, to be fair. If you've been picking up these, if you've backed it and you've been picking up these books and you're like, this is a complete, it has not been edited. So if you're running into wacky typos, forgive the writers. And they wrote a lot of words in a very short amount of time, because this was also all written like in just a few months. So I'm pretty impressed. Me personally, obviously I'm a backer.
Right.
We don't. We probably. I'm sure. I know Fran earns a copy, like at least the PDF copy, because. But we're backers too, because I want a print copy. It's not a POD. So it's awesome.
Any other lore stuff for today?
Any questions from the Peanut Gallery?
I think we covered all of the Peanut Gallery questions. There were some, but either we answered them in there or in the chat. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bit more detail about some villages in the valley in Rust. They're kind of cute. They have their own side plots. One of them actually touches on one of the new races. I believe it touches on one of the new races. Playing the undead. We talked about that before. You can play an undead, and I think one of them shows up in one of those little villages. There's just a lot.
Yeah. I definitely recommend it.
There's a lot. Yeah, I definitely like. Anyway, yeah, back Rust, because I want the Valley thing, and there's talk of more stretch goals. I don't know if there'll be time for more stretch goals, or we'll be able to unlock more stretch goals. But there's talk of more stretch goals beyond that one, potentially in the last 5 days of this campaign.
I think so.
Yeah, and if you liked what you heard about the Gleaming Valley, Fran and I will be running a little one-shot on the Onyx Path channel on Sunday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, where we're gonna show pre-Rust timeline, but a little bit of some adventures of some very, very young Hollow Legionnaires, as they...
What it's like to be a young Hollow Legionnaire.
Hollow Legionnaire and wander about the city and discover...
And Travis is mentioning that we could talk a little bit about the siege, and since it's right on the cover and everything,
which is the beautiful artwork that is on your screen right now.
Yeah. So,
so we've talked about how impregnable this place is. The latter part of the Dead Man's Rust campaign is all about Glivet Autel trying to pregnant it really hard with terrifying necromantic siege weaponry. While
the Knights and Legionnaires are suffering from this debilitatingly horrible death disease. And it's interesting because Hollow Knights' constructs are immune to disease. Hollow Legionnaires are not, because of the fleshiness of their spirit, are not immune to disease. But Rust is insidious, and immune or not, it's like a magical disease. They can get through those immunities. It's special and wackadoo. And yeah, so I mean, that pervadingness of, and just the horror. It wouldn't feel horrible if you weren't made of metal. It's like, oh, I got a little rust on the whatever.
Right. Oh, my leather-studded armor is a little rusty, or
gotta clean it. Been taking care of it very well, and it's like, no, this is killing you.
Yeah.
This yeah. So, and I love that, and jazzed if we get that their Drundali piece, because the Drundali elves rely so much on constructs and are a big piece of their culture.
Yeah.
And their god, who could die again.
So, right.
Yeah. And just when the other elf god is like getting resurrected, no less. So, like, oh, resurrect Genjavius and then kill Nathalis of Rust. That would suck.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so Travis says the knight, the Hollow Knight that's in there. So everyone on there is a Hollow Legionnaire, except for the guy who's kind of up above the Legionnaires. He's a Hollow Knight. He's supposed to be shiny chrome. He is rusted because he has the disease.
Well, there's a dragon there too, I think.
Yeah, the dragon is... I feel like it's a spoiler, but it's like on the front cover, so what can you do?
Yeah.
Well, that could be.
Like I said, necromantic siege weapons.
Yeah.
That dragon might be a good guy, because remember that Hollow Faust has their.
It's true.
Bone dragon.
Their bone rack.
Maybe it's the bone dragon coming to help them.
Maybe it is.
Probably not.
Maybe it is.
You should.
Probably not.
The Hollow Legionnaires should hold their breath until that happens. Oh, but they can, because they don't need to raise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's. What's great about all of this is there's huge scope of action available for DMs to set up interesting stuff, and for players to really make a difference in what happens and really have a strong effect on the outcomes of all of this. And that's a lot of what we worked on, was how can we set this up so that players can actually do stuff that matters? How can the heroes be heroes?
Yeah. It definitely has that epic feel to it from what I've seen so far, which I appreciate.
I mean, I've been begging this for 5e for so long, because we keep doing tier 1, tier 2. You get to tier 3 and the campaign's over. I'm like,
Yeah.
what is it like to be a 18, 19, 20th level 5e character and beyond? What does beyond 20 look like?
Mm-hmm.
Does Rust? There's no reason Rust couldn't allow for that, because it's, while some of the encounters are specifically rated, aren't. It's just a handful of things you can add. Like, there's maps, sure. There's like, this is what's in this room and this is what the Muhuha dialogue is, but there's also, like, how much you know. Rust is not a pick it up and run it module. I emphasize at this point. If you're looking for a pick it up and run it module, go pick up the Essentials D&D kit. Rust is a campaign setting. It's much richer than that. And yes, there are elements that are pick up and run it, definitely, easily. But
yeah, you could find a through line that
yeah.
that you could follow
easily. But there's so much else you can incorporate, and you could easily run this. We talk about from level, and I think the cover says level. Does the cover say what level? Level.
The plan is it
1 to
goes
10?
from 1 to 10, but
I don't think it would be hard to go up to 20, honestly.
not at all.
I really don't. If you had this and you had the
and honestly, if you've got people that you've played through from 1 to 10 in this setting, you've got enough content and enough grudges built up that you could keep running them straight through 20.
Yeah, easily.
Nice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So this isn't D&D Essentials. We're like, oh, we're level 2, we're done. Or level 4, however I don't know how far those go, but I know it doesn't go into tier 2. So, and I want the game where I get to see what it looks like to sling those 8th and 9th level spells and do that. So,
Any other lore bits about the Gleaming Valley today? Well, I will say this is our last episode that will cover Rust stuff, because Rust ends in just under 5 days. So we will not be back next week because of the holiday, and we're just going to take a break for the week. So in 2 weeks we'll be back, and we won't be talking about Rust because it'll be over with a successful Kickstarter.
So thank you guys very much for watching my gibbering ass on here.
Thanks for joining us, Fran.
First?
Yeah.
I want to do this on January 1st. So we'll either be back on January 1st or January 8th.
It's true.
For sure, January 8th. We need new topics, so I think...
Yeah. There's still quite a bit of space to go.
More of all of this business.
Yeah.
And 2 other continents.
It's true.
So,
Fran, why don't you tell us all about yourself?
Well, my name is Fran Stewart, and I write a lot of stuff for Onyx Path and specifically the Scarred Lands. Sarah's probably waving the book around. Let me see.
And
Sarah,
there it
is. Vigilant Through Shadows and Dreams. It's a novel. You'll like it. Just trust me. I did a bunch of the writing on Rust along with a bunch of other fantastic people, and I really do hope you... I edited Frostlands of Fenrilik, which Jeremy and Sarah wrote really awesome stuff for. And if you want to find my stuff, look for Francis Stewart wherever fine ebooks are sold. And if you want to find me, you can look for me on Twitter at Ronald Valor. And I love making new friends, so please do introduce yourselves.
And Fran's usually here with us on Fridays anyway, just not on camera.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
usually in the chat.
Yep.
So Sarah.
Yeah, all those things. Also have a new title out for Frostlands that I edited called Mysteries of Fenrilik, where you can adds 5 new subclasses. From that, and it's really fun. It was a fun book to work on, and we're working on another book for Fenrilic coming out in January-ish. We don't have an exact date on that yet. And on January 1st, and why I don't know if Bill did lore, that day is because we're going to be doing a charity event on another Twitch channel for a delayed charity event for World AIDS Day. I think we're not 100% sure what Fran and I are going to be doing yet, but we may be reading from Vigilant that day.
Yep.
So that's going to be happening on the 1st. I don't know if we want to post that here or something like that. So I think that's why I knew I was like, there's a conflict on the 1st, and that was it. I just looked it up. So it's that event for Trick. So that's going to be on the Heritrix Twitch channel.
Okay. And your game on Sunday
is
your game on Sundays on the Onyx Path?
Game on Sundays on the Onyx Path channel, as I said, at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, which will go in a little bit more of the Golden City. Kind of Fran and I are sort of co-jamming that one. So,
yeah. It's been a rough month.
I should have resolved the crashy problems. Note that I have not crashed now in 3 episodes of The Lore You Know. So I am anticipating that game will run much more smoothly than the last one. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And I'm Jeremy Hochhalter. I run this here Twitch channel, WH Publications. You can also find me on Facebook at the same title, WH Publications, on Twitch at WH Pubs, because it's shorter. Head over to whpublications.com to see all of the things that I have already done. It has links to all my stuff on DM's Guild, which I wrote for Adventurers League, and then some other stuff for Forgotten Realms, and then all of my stuff over on the Saretian Vault on Drive-Thru RPG. Join us on Wednesdays here on the channel for Chaz Calendar's Final Fantasy XIV actual play. Academia Chronicles of Porta Temporia. Whew, it's such a mouthful.
It's an awesome name.
Died on Wednesday, so I'm looking forward to seeing what happens this coming week. And then on Mondays, all of us here are on Travis Legg's Scarred Lands: A Family Affair game, which is also fun. That is at Plastic Age Plays here on Twitch. Everyone have a great holiday, whatever you...
go ahead. One more pitch.
Yeah.
January 9th and 10th, Fran and I will be running at OrcaCon Online convention as well. We'll be running Scarred Lands games for Frostlands of Fenrilic and Vigilant related games on that.
Yeah, it's a really fun con. Used to only be able to do it when you were local to the Seattle area, but hey, it's
now it's
2020, so
wide
get
open,
on board.
and it's $2 to play, and that's only because they're covering the fees from the online tabletop thing. So super cheap, and there's plenty of slots left in our games, and
there are loads of awesome DMs and just really great people.
So you can reach out, and we can get you onto their Discord and join some. If you're looking for just a place to play, and you're like, I'm sick of hearing about it, I want to play. OrcaCon is a great place to jump in. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, whatever you celebrate or don't celebrate this holiday season, I hope you all are safe. Take care of yourselves and of each other, and we will see you next time.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.